So our next storyteller is going to be Jillian Weiss, who is an activist in transgender issues, correct? We're looking forward to your personal story. Please feel free to share.
Thank you. So when I was a little girl, I wasn't a little girl. At least that's what they told me. I knew that I was a little girl, but they seemed to think that I was a little boy. So growing up in the 1960s, with not a lot of information, I thought I was the only person like that. And I just thought I was sick and a freak and hoped that it would go away. And it never did. I didn't transition until I was 37. That was 20 years ago. And by that time I was married and I had a young child who was 6 years old, who I loved more than anything in the world. And when I transitioned, I lost my family, I lost my friends, I lost my work, my job, my money was gone, and I was lucky. I was so lucky because I learned who I am, which is the most precious thing in the world for any of us. And I walked down the street and said, thank God that I'm transgender. And I meant it, even though I and my newfound friends were looking for where to lay our heads and where to get our next meal. I couldn't get a job as a lawyer anymore. I'd lost that job. And I worked as a secretary. And yet I was so lucky. 2017 was the worst year for transgender people in the United States. Not only from the standpoint of an administration that rolled back protections at every step of the way, but also because there were more murders of transgender people during 2017 than there had been in all previous years in the United States. And why is that? A lot of people think, well, because there's prejudice. But the fact is, it's not about prejudice. It's about discrimination. Mm-hmm. And that's what I do. A lawyer who represents transgender people who've experienced discrimination. I take companies to court because transgender people can't get jobs. When they get jobs, they get fired from them. They get harassed on the job. They get beaten up. I've had clients whose brake lines were cut and realized as they were driving home that there were no brakes as they were going down the hill. I've had clients beaten and harassed. And what are the effects of this? It's affecting mostly trans women of color. It's not affecting white trans women like myself with lots of education. What's happening is that people who are marginalized, can't get jobs, are pushed into economically depressed areas with lots of issues, can't get safe housing, can't get adequate food. They're engaging in survival crimes and survival sex. And then we say, okay, there's something wrong with these people. They're sexual deviants. They're mentally ill. They're people who can't hold a job. And the reason that they can't do that is because of what we in our society have created with the most extreme social inequality. When I take a company to court on behalf of a transgender person, oftentimes it may not seem like that much. Okay, people said something to them that they didn't like. They were kind of pushed around a little bit. But hey, we all have to deal with some bad things. We all have some problems that we have to overcome. But the effect is that people are dying. And so when we look at what happened in 2017, we see that people like MESHA CALDWELL, who was 41 years old, a black transgender woman from Canton, Mississippi. She was found shot to death the evening of January 4th. Jamie Lee Wounded Arrow, 28, an American Indian woman was identified as transgender and Two-Spirit was found dead in her apartment in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And so many others. And so when we tolerate discrimination like that, and when we have our young children who are coming out and saying their truth and who they are, and we make them feel sick and ashamed, that's what we're causing. we're causing death. It's not just prejudice. It's not like I don't agree with your lifestyle. We are killing people. And my life is dedicated to the proposition that that doesn't happen anymore. That we can use the law to change the world. And I know that's going to take a long time, and it's not an easy thing, but everything that you do to make a difference for someone else to get justice stops those people from dying. And let's do that.
Yes. Thank you, Jillian. Thank you. I know that's a very, very sensitive issue right now, especially. We feel just so overwhelmed by the oppression coming from Washington.